and let's go.
All right, man. That waiting room thing keeps popping up on my screen.
Well, that's because you're a host, but I'll unmake you a host right now. Okay.
Okay, yeah. Okay. So my name is Ricky B from NYC. I guess is my self-appointed nickname at this point. And I am an alcoholic and I am an addict for sure. And I want to thank Stephen for asking me to speak. I called him or I texted him before and I said, anything I should know, any ground rules, and I said, I'm on my cell phone, so I won't be able to choose people to share after I speak. And he said, oh, no, there's no sharing. You speak for 45 minutes. I'm like, what? Okay, I'll talk really slow. But yeah, let me start off with this. So this is funny. I love to read. My mom said when I was a kid, she'd leave me in the corner with a book, man. She'd come back 2 hours later and I'd still be reading a book. And I like reading autobiographies always. I mean, I had my whole basement, like 3 shelves of autobiographies, old stuff. And Hurricane Sandy just, took all my books down there, but God's spring cleaning, you know? And so I love reading about pop culture from the 20s, the 30s now. And it's interesting when I look back, all of my heroes in pop culture were either booze hounds or junkies. If I wrote a list of everybody from, Lenny Bruce to Errol Flynn to, Dean Martin to Dorothy Parker, which is the next book I'm going to read from the 20s and 30s, and most of them died from this disease. Eventually it catches up with everybody. There is no getting out alive unless if you find your way into some sort of program. I found my way into this one. But let me read this because I was reading this. I have this giant Sinatra book that I'm trying to get through because I want to move on to Dorothy Parker. And it's like, I'm trying to read a little bit every night. But I read this afternoon because it's so hot in New York today. I didn't even want to go out in the back. This is hysterical. So he's doing an interview with Playboy magazine, right? And Playboy asked him if he believed in God. So it says Sinatra waxed poetic. And he says, I'm like Albert Schweitzer and Bertrand Russell and Albert Einstein, and that I have a respect for life in any form. I believe in nature and the birds, the sea, the sky, and everything I can see or that there is real evidence for. If these things are what you mean by God, then I believe in God. But I don't believe in a personal God to whom I look for comfort or for a natural on the next roll of the dice. I'm not unmindful of man's seeming need for faith. I'm for anything that gets you through the night, be it prayer, tranquilizers, or a bottle of Jack Daniels. I thought that was quite amusing when I read that today, because, that sounds like my old life, whatever gets you through the night, man. Whatever puts you to sleep, whatever gets you to that feeling of not feeling. That was for me. I think my history, I'll give you a little bit of that. I'm going to be 64 in October. Will you still love me? I guess that's the big question for 64, right? And I grew up in the Bronx. My dad was an alcoholic. His father was an alcoholic. They both died from this disease. Unfortunately, they both committed suicide. I have an uncle Bill, Uncle Billy, lives down in Nashville. He's got I think he said 44 years in recovery. So you could change the family dynamic at any time, I found. And it's interesting. Uncle Billy used to send me back in the 80s. I came in, my date is September 25th, 1987. And Uncle Billy used to send me AA pamphlets. I used to get them in the mail every couple of weeks. I didn't know what the hell he was talking about. Why is my uncle sending me these pamphlets? And I used to use them, for coasters or cut up stuff. It came in handy. I never read them though. But he was planting seeds, and now I know what that means because I try to do that wherever I go in this world. So I grew up in the Bronx, and I was a very shy, quiet kid, only child. Great mom. My parents were divorced when I was very young. We lived with my grandparents for a while in an apartment building in the Bronx. And my mom's in Florida. She's in Delray. She doesn't have this problem. A little Ted neurotic, but she doesn't have this problem. And I always kept to myself. I was just always kept to myself. Like I said, loved to read, a lot of TV. I was raised on TV. Back in the Bronx, back in those days, you'd sit in front of the TV with that little table, the snack table. You'd eat your lunch or your dinner in front of the TV, the boob tube. And I hated going to school. I was like fearful, but mostly I was shy. And I was always into music. From 9 years old, I got my first guitar when I was 9 years old, and baseball, because you could see Yankee Stadium from our kitchen window. So those were my two things when I was a kid. And the way there was always music being played in our apartment when we lived with my grandparents, and I'm totally grateful for all this. I learned about 30s and 40s music and big band because my grandmother was always playing, Glenn Miller and Sinatra and Tommy Dorsey and this and that. So it was pretty cool. And then my mother was the next generation, right? And she played music from the 50s. And every Sunday night, if you're of this age demographic, we used to sit around the TV and watch the Ed Sullivan Show. Now, if you don't know who Ed is, I can't see anybody. I can't tell how old anybody is, but Ed was he was a newspaper guy, and he got this TV show, and it was a variety show. So he would have Broadway people, and he would have comedians, magicians, all kinds of stuff. And he would have rock and roll bands. And one Sunday night, we're watching it, and the Rolling Stones came on. And I immediately, at 9 years old, identified with these guys that looked different. I just saw myself in them, and I saw Keith Richards and Jagger, and I just I know what I think. I got something. I can identify with this look. And of course the Beatles were out. I had a little Beatle haircut, braces, little skinny kid. So I identified with the way they looked. And being a shy kid, I heard the girls screaming, and that seemed like a complete plus for me. I was intrigued by that. But I think most of all, when they finished playing, the band would go over to Ed. He'd be, standing there, and he looked completely horrified. And that really was attractive to me. If you can't wear the white hat, you wear the black hat. And I literally asked my mother for a guitar. And a couple of weeks later, she worked in the handbag business in Manhattan. And her boss gave her a guitar for my birthday to give me, an acoustic guitar. And that was my first guitar. And, I believe everybody knows how to do something really well. Somebody, everybody's got something, whether you're a chef, you could open up the hood of a car and take an engine apart and put it back to, everybody's got something. Numbers, good at law, I could pick songs off the radio and learn how to play them. I'm not saying I was great, but I could hear the melody and I could learn how to play them. So I was immediately like, this is it. This is what I want to do. And I say out loud, my mother's been nothing but supportive my whole musical career. And I've had a fabulous musical career. I'm not going to hide. People talk about, I did this. I was a lawyer. I'm going to tell you what I did. I was in a bunch of bands, and in the early 80s, I got into a band, and we had a couple of hit records, and it was lovely. And we were inducted into the Rock Hall in 2015. And that first guitar that I got when I was 9 is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And I was sober at the induction, and that was really cool, man. That was like, wow, kid from the Bronx. And let me make it very clear. I got sober, clean and sober in 87. My big money years were the early 80s. So although I have the lovely stuff on my wall and a couple of statues here and there, my bank account does not show that all this stuff I'm saying, because I was completely active when I was making a lot of money. So that money went in one pocket and went right out the other pocket. I had no responsibilities. I had no idea what it was to be an adult. And the greatest downfall of people with money when they have periods when they make money is you think it's never going to end. And of course, everything ends. So here I'm a kid now. We moved to Queens when I'm 13 years old, and I'm in junior high school, and I start meeting other kids that are musicians. This guy's a drummer, this guy plays bass, and we put together these little bands in the neighborhood, and we start like doing little rehearsals in garages. Garage bands is where the term comes from. And as we get to 13, 14, around there, it's the early 70s. Somebody brings a joint, then there's a 6-pack. I don't remember any hard liquor yet, but it was definitely beer and pot. And I was a good sport, and a lot. We all experiment, or most of us experiment when we're around that age. When I ask, when I go to these, I'll tell you about that later. When I go to detoxes and treatment facilities, when did you start? It's always around 13 and 14. Sometimes it's later, sometimes it's early, but it seems like 13 is that inquisitive age. Now the deal is, most of the people that I was hanging around with grew up, got real jobs, never had a problem with drugs or alcohol, bought a house, cars, had kids. Of course, we don't know that we have this disease when we start. I mean, if I knew then what I know now, that my father and his father and my uncle all have the disease, I would have said, maybe there's some genetic thing here. But, who the hell knows back then? So all I remember is that first joint was that I felt my whole body relax. And I didn't feel shy. I didn't have fear. I felt better about the world. And I said, I'm in. I knew it right away. And when other people would smoke one joint and say, no, I got to go home and do my homework, or when they'd have one Heineken, I would want 5, and so on and so forth. So right away there was an issue. Of course, it was all fun and games then. I was just a kid, but the signs were already there. I started hanging out in Manhattan pretty early. I mean, by 15, I had phony proof I was hanging out at like these famous rock clubs in the city. So everybody was older than me. I started drinking. I started going for, I remember I went through my Southern Comfort phase. That was awful though. Oh my God, what an awful taste. But I did it because of Janis, right? Janis Joplin. Vodka, you go around the table, man. I remember Remy, we went through a Remy stage. And we were kids, man. We were just like teenagers, young teenagers. I settled in on Jack Daniels. And frankly, because my 2 big heroes, Keith Richards and Frank, drank Jack. And they drank it straight. I remember that. They drank it straight, and so did I. Wasn't into like scotch. I remember, and here's an interesting point. When my parents were still together, my dad was a bartender, and he worked late. He'd come back, so I'd be getting up to go to school. He'd be passed out in the house, but there'd be that bottle of J&B on the kitchen table, and that smell I will never forget as long as I live. And maybe that's why I've never tasted J&B. Um, touchstones, man, triggers. But Jack Daniels was cool for me, you know. So here I am, like now I'm 18, 19. I'm playing in bands. We're playing clubs in the city. Then I start doing pills. And once again, you know, other people were, you know, knew when to stop. They knew when enough was enough. And I just kept, you know, rocking and rolling. But then again, I was living, you know, I was reading magazines. It was sex, drugs, and rock and roll. You know, I wanted to be that guy. Um, so here I am, and I'm doing what you do when you're that age. You know, not coming home. My mother was very lenient. I was not coming home. I'd wind up in Staten Island and freaking Brooklyn and lofts in Lower Manhattan. And I was having fun, man. I was a teenager. Then I got into a band. You know, now that like the end of the '70s are coming, I did a record, and we went out on the road. You know, I drank a little bit too much, I drugged too much. Came back to New York, and then see now the turning point here is when the '80s came, because in with the '80s came cocaine, and that was the fly in the ointment. You know, once I did that, and I hated it to death. I hated it, but yet that first few minutes was just magic. First few minutes, and then the rest of the time was spent looking for more. And I got heavily involved in that, and the combination of that and Jack Daniels and pills and, you know, pot. And I might have fluctuated on other stuff, but, you know, it was pretty consistent. Um, and I get into this band in 81, and we put this record out, and it becomes a huge hit. So now I got some dough. That was not a good idea. I never saved any. You know, I don't know what that has to do with. I mean, I definitely did not have a father figure that set me down and said, "Look, when you make some money, you're going to put, you know, this amount away." I had no clue. So as it came in, I just spent it. And we had nice apartments. Never bought anything until I was in recovery. And we would move up and down Third Avenue depending on how good the records were doing. You know, different, really nice apartments, and this one wasn't so nice. But my intake was really increasing. And in 1983, we were on a big tour, and I lovingly call that period my Richard Pryor period. If you don't know, you can Google that one. And I literally burnt a hole in my lung. And we were in Opelika, Alabama, the band. We were on tour in Opelika, Alabama. And my lung collapsed on stage. Somehow I managed to get through the whole night. They brought me to my room where we were staying, and I went to lay down. I remember the road manager was in the room, and I went to lay down, and I shot back up. I had this horrible stabbing pain in my chest, and I said, "You better take me to the hospital." And they took me to the hospital, and they literally held my arms down, and you'd think this be a bottom, but no, held my arms down, and they said, "We're going to have to put a tube in your chest. We can't put you out." So, and they did it while I was awake. And then they shot me up with some stuff, and that was that. But I collapsed my lung really bad. My heart was moving to the other side, and I heard later that I was about 5 minutes from having a massive heart attack. So that was in '83, and I was in Opelika, Alabama for a couple of weeks. And I remember that the doctor, who was the head of the hospital down there, he said to me, "You have the beginnings of emphysema. So if you smoke pot, you can't smoke pot anymore." And now I knew nothing about recovery, you know, except for those pamphlets my uncle was sending me. And I was like, okay. So what did I do? When I got back to New York, I went to a couple of different doctors, and I got a couple of scripts for pills, you know, because I didn't know about abstinence. I didn't know anything about that. And what happened? Come on, what happened? So you do a couple of these, you'd go out for a couple of drinks, you know, get me 2 or 3 drinks in me, and I'm making phone calls, because that's what happens to us. That's why I believe in total abstinence. And so from '83 to '87 was circling the drain, man. You know, not only that, but when I would drink and then pick up, I would get these pains in my chest. So everybody knew me because I was always holding my chest. Didn't stop me. You would think so, but it didn't stop me. And I kept going on, man. And I was 128 pounds. I didn't even really try to stop. I'd have a moment of clarity. You start weeping. I can't do this anymore. I mean, if I told you how many nights I spent on the road after a show in my hotel room with my bottle of Jack and my dry goods and sweating and, everything that goes along with this. I know one thing, I couldn't stand the sound of silence. So when I was on the road, I'd go into a hotel room. Immediately I have to turn the TV on because I couldn't hear myself. I couldn't stand what was going on in my head. And if I was there for 3 days, man, that TV was on for 3 days. And that was my life, I mean, there's a million stupid stories of horrendous results of drinking, blacking out, and all kinds of nasty stuff. But who cares? It's the same. We all got the same stories, just different variables. So now we get to 80. So now I'm turning 30, right? And I said, well, that's it. I'm done. So from 30 to September, my birthday's in October, right, of 87. I'm trying. And I still have my diary. I got all my diaries from back then. And in my diary, every day is the same. Today, I'm not going to have a drink. Today. We're going to go out for dinner, though. We're going to have a nice dinner. So we'd go out to dinner, or that'd be good for like 10 minutes. Come on, have a Heineken. You could have a Heineken. All right, give me a Heineken. Yeah, I have to have one Heineken. I'd feel a little, I feel nothing, but all right, have another Heineken. Somebody would buy me a drink, have another Heineken. 2 or 3 Heinekens in, I was, you know what? Give me a Jack straight up. And then 2 or 3 of those, I was making phone calls, and it was the same for every day, for the whole time. Now I'm starting to get scared. It's like, whoa, I can't stop. And people are starting, like I was talking to Stephen before the meeting, some very, friends of ours, we both like the same music. And he was like notorious drug and drink guy. And he turned to me one night in his British accent and said, hey, mate, you better cut down, man. So I said, oh, that's a bad sign. So now we're like August of 87. And we go to a wedding. We're invited to a friend's wedding, and they put us at a table with friends, as they would. And I lean into my friend Jill sitting next to me with my 2 favorite words at the time, which were, you holding? And already I had my glass of Jack sitting on the table. And she said, no, I don't do that anymore. I'm going to these meetings, just when I want to hear. And I'm sober, and I'm telling you, she didn't get the first half a phrase out, and I was like, good for you. And I start looking around the room for somebody else, another victim. But she kept talking. She talked like for the whole goddamn affair. I mean, after a while, all I heard was like, Charlie Brown, like wah, 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 wah. But she planted a seed. So that's twice I mentioned planting a seed. So that's August, and September 25th, 1987. And it wasn't even like one of the worst nights, but I remember standing in front of the mirror in our apartment. I was 128 pounds. I made Keith Richards look healthy, and I'm sweating. My eyes are like that, like this. Heart's beating out of my chest. Drunk. And I've rifled through the medicine cabinet looking for anything to kind of calm me down. I think Comtrex was the cold pill back then we used to have that we used. I just looked in the mirror and I said to myself, dude, you're going to die, bro. And I picked up the phone, man, at 2 a.m. I called Jill T. And I said, she laughs about it because we talk around my anniversaries every year. She says, I said to her, Jill, I'm coming in. Like a spy. She says, you sounded like a spy. I'm coming in. And she said, can you make it till tomorrow? And I said, yeah, I think so. And she took me to my first meeting on the Upper East Side. I lived on near the Mustard Seed, which became my home group. I lived on, all around 3rd Avenue down there, Murray Hill. She took me to my first meeting. I raised my hand. I said, I'm Ricky. I'm a drug addict and alcoholic. I started crying. And I was home, baby. And I know when people say, I listen to a lot of people, because I do a lot of work at treatment facilities, like I started to say, in detoxes. And I don't really like meetings. You know, no, it's not for me. I don't like the people. You know, and I'm always like, dude, they just, you know, you OD'd like 3 times last week. You know, I'm giving you a suggestion. You know, just try it. I walked in and I was just like, yeah, because I always wanted to be part of something. Maybe that's why I joined rock and roll bands. And I walked in, I heard these people. I mean, nobody looked like me. I mean, I was just like a rock guy. You know, all people in suits or, you know, whatever, all different kinds of people, but they all said the same stuff. I was like, come on, how long has this been going on? You know, turns out since 1935. And I just loved it. And I remember at the very beginning, you know, those first few years, and actually that was a DA meeting, Drugs Anonymous. And then I didn't realize that I was an alcoholic yet. I started going to NA meetings. And one of the meetings we went to was St. Mark's, which was infamous for chairs being thrown and people shooting up in the bathroom and all kinds of stuff. And I got what I needed there. You know, it's like, it was crazy town. And somebody there said to me, you know, there's this great meeting called the Mustard Seed. And, you know, it's different. It's calmer. It's an AA meeting, you know, a lot of sobriety. And I went there. I loved it. You know, it was near my house. And I went to quite a few meetings. And we used to go to big book studies. I mean, I got my original big book right over here. And it's all underlined, you know, highlighted from all those big book study groups we used to go to. You know, there was the meeting after the meeting. If anybody wants to hang out after, we go to Scotty's Diner, you know, and I went there for 20 years, man, you know, until we moved out here to Queens. And then I found meetings out here. I travel the world. I mean, I don't much anymore, especially now, but I've been to meetings all over the world. You know, you could find a bar and drugs. I found a bar and drugs in every goddamn country I went to. And I found a meeting in every country I went to. So there you go. No matter if they spoke English or not, it was the same message, same friendly people. You need a ride back to your hotel. You know, I changed my whole thing. Like when I was still on the road a lot with this band, instead of being up all night, I would pull into town and I would get on the phone. Nobody had cell phones, right? I'd call the information. I'd ask for AA Intergroup, and I'd find it, and I'd say, is there a meeting in town? I'm in Sheboygan. And they'd say, well, there's one about 20 miles away from your hotel. Would you like us to pick you up? I was like, wow, that's nice. You know, so where could you get that, right? And I changed my whole lifestyle. And yeah, it was rough at the beginning because I was on the road with a bunch of maniacs, and I was hiding in my bunk on the tour bus with a big book. But I had a lot of support. I had somebody I called all the time. We happened to be touring with another group, and they had gotten clean about the same time. So like I would hang out with them, and it was rough because you go through a boredom stage. The people around you don't want to hang out with you anymore. Maybe because they think that they're doing something good for you, but they isolate you. Or maybe I wasn't fun anymore. Who the hell knows? But turned out to be the right decision. And that was my road life. You know, I come back to New York. You know, and we'll speed up to maybe 12 years ago. I remember that I was having a rough time in recovery, and I called my friend Richie, who lives in Florida. We used to run together, and now he's a part owner in a really cool treatment facility down there that's based around music. And I told him, man, I'm feeling horrible. Like I'm really confused. And come down to Florida. Let's sit down and write something. Let's do what we do. We're songwriters. And we wrote this song called Broken is a Place. And I came back to New York and I recorded it, you know, cheap demo. I put it online and I started getting messages from around the world saying, hey man, You told my story. It's like, I don't understand. How do you, what are you reading my text? That's my story. And I said, really? And we started writing other songs, and I started doing these kind of recovery rock and roll gigs. And people would come over to me afterwards and said, hey, man, I grew up on your music, or, it's so cool that you're in recovery, and I lost somebody to this disease, or I'm in recovery and stuff. And I started to think, maybe I could do something here. Maybe I could take my music and combine it with my recovery. So I started writing all these songs, and I started going around. When I had about 7 songs, I started cold calling treatment facilities. I said, hey, man, this is what I do. Can I come in and just play for the clients? I started doing it, and I loved it, and after each song, they would say, wow, I identify with that, that's me. And I said, wow, what a cool third act, So I actually did a recovery record a couple of years ago. And, when I go, I bring a stack of them to treatment facilities and give them out to the clients. I sell them to civilians so I could pay to give them out. And it's all rock and roll, but it's recovery music. And I just finished my second one. And, I got a pretty freaking blessed life. I'm doing 2 things that I love to do. And I love to see people get it. I really do. To see that light in people's eyes. And I know, we have a saying about being responsible. It's my gig. I know that I cannot just like nobody could get me clean and sober until I was ready. I can't get anybody clean and sober. I could take you to the message. I could show you the right door to open, but I can't make you stop. So it's my job to reach back, that dark hallway where people are kind of stuck between denial and surrender, and kind of wave them over. It's like, hey, baby, let's come over here, man. You're going to love it. Come on. Let's get a cup of coffee. Sit down. You'll be fine. And that's what I've turned my life into. And right now, I've done 3 recovery events from my basement here. Obviously, I can't go anywhere. I miss it. I can't tell you how badly I miss going to these places, and we'll do it again. I had a whole summer's worth of stuff I was going to be doing around the country. But I'm connecting with people on social media. I'm the guy that always says on my Facebook page, if anybody's struggling with addiction of any kind, PM me, let's chat. I love, because that helps me, man. You know what I mean? It helps me. And as far as what's going on now, I've been in training for this like for 32 and a half years. Yeah, it's scary. It's unknown. It's rough and tumble. There's all kinds of stuff going on at once. But somehow I'm okay. And I think part of it is, see how I'm circling around here. Brian, I'm not sure if Brian's on here. He's on my Facebook page, and he says, I go to this really cool 12 noon meeting out of Boca Raton. Would you be interested in speaking? And I said, absolutely. And I went on this meeting, and then I met Rich, and Steven's there, and all the other guys, Sandy, and this one and that one. And I'm telling you, like, since March, I think I stopped writing my calendar because there's nothing to write in there anymore. But I must have gone to like over 95, 98. I don't know. I've missed like 3 days. I mean, that's more meetings than I've gone to since the beginning. Like, I'm like a 3 meeting a week guy, when this isn't happening. Every day. What do I get out of it? Like everything. I've got a full toolbox, man. You cannot screw with me. Come on. Come on, news. Trying to scare me. I got principles. I got people. I got books. I got prayer. I got God. I'm helping other people. Can't screw with me, man. And that's what I get out of going to those meetings every day. And trust me, I've become a better person in these last 3 months. Isn't that weird how that works? I'm better around the house. I got an 18-year-old turning 19 next month. My wife was sick before this happened. right when the shit hit the fan, she was in the hospital for a few days. You know, it's like stuff swirling around outside. So I remember way at the beginning, they said, stay close to the center of the wheel when stuff's going around fast, you know, and that's what I do. And yeah, I'm not saying I don't have moments where I wake up in the middle of the night and go, oh my God, we're all going to die. But, you know, like when I wake up in the morning, right, my sponsor says to me, my sponsor, Ronnie, and I wake up like in a cold sweat, and he says, that's the vulture, man. That's just the disease waking up before you. He's like sitting on the bed behind you. He's like, okay, Ricky, how could I screw with your day? You know? So it's up to me to, like, you know, hit my knees, redirect my thinking, make me a better man, open up some of these books that I have over here to my left, make a few phone calls, have a couple of cups of coffee, and sit in this very chair, unless I'm out in the backyard, where I am every day at noon. And that's carried me through. And listen, I'm in the recovery world. Like, I'm also, I forgot to mention, I went to school 2 years ago, and I'm certified as a counselor and a recovery coach. And I actually worked in a place for a couple of months before this happened, which I loved. I talk to people. The relapse rate right now is unbelievable. What's going on in this world? But I just know about this country. The statistics this year are going to be awful. How great is it that we have a place to go to bring our stuff? You know, how great is it that we lift each other up? We carry each other through this storm that we're going through. You're scared one day, I'm scared the next day. You talk me off the ledge one day, I'll talk you off the ledge the next day. Come on, it's freaking brilliant. And here we are on Zoom, right? I mean, I just think Bill and Bob and the rest of the first 100 must be looking down going, oh, well done. Nice work, you know? No matter what. I got a t-shirt, no matter what, you know? Mad, glad, or sad, we don't pick up. I mean, this is like brilliant. How we're thinking on our freaking feet here, you know? And I love when I hear people, there's a couple of people I ran into in the neighborhood, they said, I don't like those Zoom meetings. I'm like, what are you doing then? You're just not going to meetings? I mean, this is like a gift, you know? And it's a little weird, you know? I don't see anybody. I feel like I'm talking to myself. But, you know, I mean, this has kept me going. I don't know what else to say. And as far as God and praying, you know, I don't quite believe what Frank Sinatra believes, but I don't need to put a face on it. I don't need a name for it. I just know that when I pray in the morning, and I'm grateful, I have a better day, and that's all that counts. It's all I'm interested in, is to be a better person. You know, and I have a God, you know. I mean, I grew up Jewish on one side, Italian Catholic on the other side. I was very confused when I was a kid. But now I just have this being that controls, you know, drives the bus. And I'm good with that, you know. And I notice the difference when I forget to pray. I mean, you could pray anytime during the day, of course, and I do. But when I make an effort and I really hit my knees when I'm first, you know, going to the bathroom, hit your knees, and the day is smoother or something. I don't know what it is, and I think it's kind of cool that I don't know what it is, and I don't really want to know what it is. But you know, I got nothing to complain about. I mean, I really have. I know one thing, that like alcoholics, active alcoholics, and addicts are always afraid of what's around the corner. And in being in recovery for almost 33 years, like I have this like optimism that something cool is around the corner. And I know that if I don't get something that I think I want, you know, and that in my business, it's all rejection. You know, it's very like the odds of getting what you want are really slim to none. I'm a very lucky guy. Now I have a thing that I know that the God that I believe in has something different for me. So if this person doesn't like what I'm doing, or that person, or if I wanted to go get a job here, or you know, and I don't get it, I think, okay, instead of going, God damn it, you know, and getting a resentment and bitching and moaning, I think one of my first thoughts is, okay, so there must be something different that's out there for me. It's cool. I'll be patient. You know, bring it. And that's really it. You know. once again, Stephen, thank you for asking me to speak. And I managed to speak for almost the whole time. If I was set up, I'd sing a song for you, but I'm not. So this is cool, man. Just keep that toolbox next to you, and you got to open it though. See, it doesn't no good just sitting on the floor. They're closed. You got to reach in. You got to do the next right. My very first sponsor just kept telling me, just do the next right thing. I'm like, what the hell does that mean? Just do the next right thing. What's the next right thing? And then he topped it with more will be revealed. I'm like, oh, fabulous. What does that mean? Just sit there and listen. And sure enough, more was revealed. The longer I stayed in here, the more stuff I learned about and knew. And I kind of have smart feet. Do I know everything? No, but I know enough to get me back to the next meeting. And, from there, flowers blossom, as long as I keep doing that next right thing and keep helping other people. That's the key. That's my thing, is I love talking to other alcoholics and addicts and guiding them to the message. And listen, let's not make no mistake about it. I could be an asshole too. But, most of the time I'm a pretty sweet guy at this point, and I'm just trying to help people out. So thanks for asking me to speak, brother.